Hello everybody, this is Connor at BoatsDon'tSink here with another deck profile. This time we are looking at the third of the 5 quintuplets from the Quintessential Quintuplets 2. We're looking at a Miku deck. This is an 8-gate deck, as with the previous two sisters. Miku has one specific climax trigger that she focuses on. It's actually true of all 5, so we've covered choice and standby already. Now we're looking at gate triggers. As for the deck list itself, I'm not entirely sold on this deck. This isn't one I've really got any testing with or know anyone in my locals that's played a whole lot with post set 2. I did notice when I was building this deck that Miku has a... I noticed two main things about Miku's card pool. A, she has really good early plays and really good events. And B, she has really bad level zeros. So our early game is going to be a bit weak in this deck, but our sort of like mid game, as long as we can generate enough resources, our mid game should be really strong and transition into a pretty good late game. The problem is just going to be the early game, because as of right now, unless I missed some significant cards, I don't think Miku's level 0 game is very strong. But starting out with our Climax Combos, we are, as I said, playing 8 gate, so we're playing both set 1 combos, actually. Unlike the last two, where we played the new Ichika level 1 combo, and we actually played 2 new combos for Nino. We've just opted to go with the set 1 combos for Miku. I don't think either of the ones in set 2 are better, though the level 3 combo from set 2 is maybe a side grade that you could consider playing. Looking at our level 1 combo, this is the Quintessential Quintuplets Miku Nakano. It's the double rare from set 1. Gains 500 for each of your other quintuplets characters, so it's going to be 6,000 power on a full stage. And the Climax combo is a familiar one from, if you know, Goblin Slayer or Danmachi. When you play the Climax, you either search or salvage a headphone. So deck or waiting room, you pick one, then you'll get a headphone. In set 1, we had a headphone event that was an event counter. Set 2 has actually given us a new event with the same name. So you can use either for this combo in whatever split up to 4 total you want. We've opted for a 1-3 old new split in this deck, but you can adjust that to your personal preference. So it doesn't need to reverse, it just gets you a card. It gets you a card that is really good at getting other cards or looping into itself. The Climax is a gate, which means, you know, we're playing 8 gate, obviously, so we're going to be able to get Climaxes to hand, so we can loop this combo probably pretty easily. And 6,000 power on defense is reasonable for a level 1 combo. Once we have assists in play, that can be 65 pretty easily. So, possible that we can even win on defense, especially if you opt to play any level 1 backups in the deck. Our level 3 combo is, as I said, also from set 1. This is the double rare plus. On play, it heals, as do a lot of our cards, so that's, we're going to be doing a lot of healing in this deck. Pretty defensive deck, if we can get compressed. The Climax combo itself is on attack. If you have another quintuplets character, pay 1. Perform the following 2 effects 1 time each. The first effect that you perform is to put the bottom 2 of your opponent's deck into waiting room and deal X, where it's the number of climaxes revealed. So this is like an Icy Tail effect, but it's for a really small number of cards. So you're dealing 0 to 1 on this. You might not get damage every time, but sometimes you will, and it's really good when you do. Second effect is to look at up to 2 from the top of your opponent's deck. Choose up to 2, put them back, and put the rest in waiting room. So this lets you rip climaxes out of your opponent's top 2 if they were going to cancel. And if you see 2 clean cards, well, it means you're swinging for 3, and the only chance they have it canceling is the 3rd card. So really, this punishes your opponent for having climaxes in the bottom 2 or top 2 of their deck. And if you can manage to rip climaxes out of both places, then you have a pretty good chance of just sticking your swings for 3. And if you ripped climaxes off the bottom, you're getting burn damage as well. So pretty strong for how cheap it is. It's just 2 stock to play, it heals, and then on attack pay 1. Meaning that, you know, if you have 2 of these, that's only 4 stock to play the 2 of them, and then you have enough for the combos as long as you attack with your 3rd character first. So really resource efficient, because we are going to be spending a lot of resources at level 2 in this deck. Looking at the events that we're playing, these are pretty critical to the deck. Headphone, the set 1 version, is a counter. You reveal the top card of your deck, and then salvage a level X or lower quintuplets character, where it's the level of the card you revealed. So typically, this is probably going to be getting 0s, maybe 1s. If you get lucky, you're going to get a 3 or lower. If we could make it get 1s very often, which you might have to adjust some of the deck's ratios a bit to do, you could play a lot more copies of this to loop your level 1 combo by just letting them die and then playing these main phase to get your level 1 combo back. Otherwise, it's just getting you 0s, which, as I've said, Miku's 0 lineup is not particularly good. It's not like Nino's or Ichika's where we have a ton of good utility that we would want to be getting off of this card. So I've only opted to play 1 copy of this headphone, and you're primarily going to be using that to try to get your level 1 combo back. Our second option for headphone is the one from set 2, which I think is actually a really strong card. You do have to have a Miku on stage to play it, but that's really easy in this deck. You look at up to 5 cards in the top of your deck, choose up to 1 Miku, put it in your hand, put the rest in waiting room, and then look at the top card of your deck and put it on top or bottom. If you use the combo and get both headphones, you can play this one first, check top 5, add a card, and then look at top to try to control hitting a level 1 or higher card on top for your salvage event to be able to get a level 1 combo back to do the combo again. So using these together and sequencing them properly can lead to really strong results and help you get the specific cards that you're looking for. This also gives us a lot of deck control. Typically, these combos are grabbing events that can mill through your deck at counter timing. We don't have that ability here, but we still do get main phase deck control on the following turn after our combo if we grab this headphone. So still a strong card, and looking at 5 and being able to control the top card of our deck afterwards makes up for not being able to play it at counter timing, I think. The third event that we're playing 4 of these just because we don't have ways to search them. You have to just kind of like hard draw these. So we want 4 to be able to see it as often as possible because I think this event is pretty strong, despite not playing some of the cards that interact with it. So for this one, it's a 2-1. You have to have 2 or more Miku instead of just having 1. But again, should be very easy in this deck. You choose one of the following 4 effects. So you have a lot of options here. The first option is to choose up to 1 Confession of Love Miku in your hand and put it on any position of stage. And then at the end of the turn, it goes to your waiting room. That card is the new double rare level 3 from set 2, which I'll cover it later when I talk about it in the other options, but for reference, it does have an on-play effect that lets you search more copies of this card. So if you have multiple of the level 3 in your hand, you can play the event, play one from hand, search a second event, play it, play another from hand, search an event, play it, play the third one from hand. So it lets you sort of chain them to get the level 3s in play. The part of this that I don't like is that the level 3 goes to your waiting room at the end of your turn, meaning you've spent a lot of hand and not really gotten as much value out of it as I think you would want. You want the character to stick around so that you can hold board defensively with it and maybe get to attack a second time. Compared to other early play options, it just losing that early play on board hurts a lot, I think. Second option is the one we're going to be using the most in this deck. Choose a card in your clock, put it in your waiting room. It's a heal. It selectively heals. So even if you like refresh point a climax in the middle of your clock, you can just choose it to put into waiting room. To heal whatever you want. Great effect. 1 cost heal is just really good. We're going to be abusing this as much as possible. Third effect is also actually pretty decent. Choose one of your opponent's characters with level higher than your opponent's level and put it in their waiting room. So it's just pay 1, ditch 1 to anti-change your opponent. They can encore their character, so it's not as good against things like Rusha and Shizu, but it is still going to force them to pay 3 if they're a standby deck that doesn't have encore, or if they're playing Kanata or anything like that. And the last option is choose one of your characters. That character gets 3,500 power and cannot move to another position of the stage until the end of your opponent's next turn. The moving part doesn't really matter. You just play this right before you go into combat. And unless your opponent has like some effect that moves your characters, it's not going to be an issue. 3,500 power is a pretty large number. So sometimes if they have a really important character on board and you just really need to reverse it and answer it, you can go for that option. But I think primarily we're going to be healing, and occasionally we're going to be anti-changing our opponent with this. Now for event and gate support. We are playing lots of events, we are playing lots of gate triggers. Both of these things typically require you to build your deck specifically to support them, and in this deck we have some cards that do that. The first card we have is Worst Timing Miku Nakano. This is on play. If you have 2 or more other quintuplets characters, you may draw 1. If you do, discard 1. That is actually the primary effect that we're playing this card for. The secondary effect is pretty niche. We're mainly just here for the draw ditch. It is one of our ways to find event cards, since we don't have many other ways to get them. Especially our 2-1 event. We can get our 1-0 with combo. But the 2-1 event, this is one of our only ways to get. Second effect is that you can discard a Climax on play, which we'll probably have a lot of in hand. If you do, you can choose one of your opponent's characters, put it in their memory, and at the beginning of the encore step, your opponent puts that character from their memory on any position of their stage. So this is a like delayed blink sort of thing, where you get to send them to memory and they don't get their character back until end of turn, which opens up direct attacks for you. You can dodge counters, strong against decks that are going to be threatening, like rest counter, minus soul counter, etc. But cost is a little heavy just on like hand size when you're doing this, especially since this level 0 is not really going to have any board presence itself. So you're only using this very infrequently, but the draw ditch effect is good throughout the game. Second option we have is the Brainstorm in a Jersey Miku. This is a Brainstorm 4 that only hits on gate triggers. It searches for a quintuplets character for each climax you hit, for each gate trigger you hit. We're playing 8 gates, so that's inconsequential. It's just a search Brainstorm. And whenever you play a gate climax, all of your characters get plus 500 power until end of turn. That doesn't seem like a lot of power, but when you're able to give it to every lane on your board, it is pretty decent. And I think this is better than the set 2 Brainstorm, which is also a search Brainstorm that just has an alarm to draw ditch. Though, if you're trying to get your events, you can play the set 2 Brainstorm as well. In this build in particular, we are playing an early play, though, that requires this Brainstorm on stage. So, harder to switch if you want to keep that part of this deck intact. The other card that we require for the early play is Heartfelt Miku Nakano, though this card, again, also synergizes pretty well with the rest of our deck. Continuous Assist, all of your Miku in front of this get plus 500 times their level. Great with our early plays, because that gives them 1500. Even our level 1 combo is at least getting 500 power off of this, so it's good to just play down at level 1. Once per turn, when you play an event, look at the top 2 cards of your deck, put them back in any order. This is also really good at helping to confirm our event counter to salvage cards that we want. We can play the check top 5 event, and then look at the top card of our deck, put it on top, or move it, if it's not something that we want. And if we do move it, then we can look at the top 2 with this effect, and also put those back in any order. So we're getting to see effectively like 3 cards to try to find what we want for our top check salvage. And last, whenever we trigger a climax with a gate icon, we can discard any 1 card to choose a card in clock, return it to hand, and put the top card of deck into clock. This, since it lets us grab any card, is another way to get events to our hand, and allows us to discard anything, not just climaxes. So if we trigger a gate and want to actually grab a climax off of it to hold, we can discard something else to try to get either like a level 1 combo or an event or something like that. So, really good card in an 8-gate deck, just to have hand-fixing options all the time. And the last card that kind of interacts with our events is Pure Wish Miku. On play, you rearrange the top 3 cards of your deck, and then choose up to one of your opponent's characters and return it to their hand. This is typically going to be the better sort of like removal option over the level 0 we looked at, just because it is going to force them to actually play their character back down with stock, instead of getting it back for free at end of turn. And then second, when you play this card to the stage from your hand, you can discard a headphone to shuffle your waiting room back into your deck, which is effectively a heal 1, since you get to free fresh, you get to ignore refresh point here. Not a super relevant effect, but still decent, still gets you effectively a heal, which we're trying to stack up a lot of in this deck. Now for the early plays, this deck, as I've said, does have some pretty strong early plays. We're playing 2 different ones in this build. First up, we're playing Intimate Sisters Miku Nakano. So this requires the Brainstorm and the Level Assist in our on our stage to get -1 level, but that should be fairly easy. We're probably prioritizing both of those cards most of the time anyway. On play, you can look at up to 3 cards with the top of your deck, choose one, put it in hand, put the rest in waiting room. Again, this can grab anything, meaning we can grab our climaxes, or we can grab our events, or just characters if we need more characters. And whenever we play an event, this gains 2,000 power until end of turn. So this card is actually one reason to maybe consider playing more of the counter version of the event, since you can play it defensively and boost up to 13,000 power with the assist behind this. Though offensively, we can still get that power line just by playing our check 5 event or our heal event or anything like that. Overall, really good card because it cantrips, it's easy to early play, it just has synergy with the rest of the deck. The other early play that we're playing 3 copies of is the new one from set 2, Devoted Feelings Miku. It gets -1 level if you have 4 or more quintuplets characters, meaning it's pretty easy to chain the set 1 early play into this by filling up your board, and you don't have to worry about your waiting room state with climaxes or anything like that to get your early plays. It's 9k base. During your turn it gains 2,000, which your characters will always all be quintuplets. So that's going to be 11, 12-5 if you have the level assist behind it. It's going to be 10-5 on defense, which is still pretty decent. And then it heals on play, which is just going to keep us at level 2. We want to try to stay at level 2 as long as possible, just to sort of get value out of these cards. And the other cards that we're running, just to sort of round out our deck, we have Broad Smile Miku Nakano. This is kind of just a card that I think we need in the deck. It's a 3500, so it is a +0 that you can play out turn 1. Has the demerit of your opponent's characters getting Encore for 2 stock, but on play you can choose a card in your hand and put it into your stock. So if you are able to resolve your combo and get over hand size, you can convert some of that into stock that you can actually use for your early plays. Since both of our early plays cost the full 2 stock, and we want to be playing those 2-1 heal events, we might be a bit hungry for stock at sort of level 2. So this is going to help us convert any excess hand we have into stock to pay for that. Next card we have is like Cats and Dogs Miku. This is our Climax Swapper. Even though we have gate triggers, we still want to have a Climax Swapper in the deck just to make sure we have the right Climax for when we need it. Especially in the early game, if we just draw the wrong one for our level 1 combo, this can help fix it pretty easily. This card is always accessible off of the event counter as long as it's in your waiting room, since you'll always reveal at least a level 0. And on play it mills 3 optionally, which can help you get some like targets for your salvage event into waiting room early, or if you don't have any climaxes in waiting room, you can put one into your waiting room so that you can either climax swap or just get value off of any gate triggers that you hit. We're playing 4 copies of Beyond Her Gaze Miku. This is not the greatest clock plus, but out of the 2 that Miku has access to, I think it's the better one. On play, you mill 2. If you hit a climax, you get to choose one of your opponent's characters in the center stage and give it -1,000 power. This can help you clear out some lanes at 0, especially if they have any really small characters with on-reverse effects. You can just send those straight to waiting room and not have to worry about their on-reverse effect. This will be especially relevant next month once Sayakano releases. They have a lot of really small characters that are really strong on board that we can remove with this. And second effect is when this goes to waiting room, you can pay 1 and clock 1 to salvage a quintuplets character. Unfortunately, this is not great at level 0 because our waiting room is likely to still be small, but it's a +1. It is a clock plus, so it's going to help us get to level 1 so we can play our actual combos out. You're just really going to have to hope that you get something you want in your waiting room to actually salvage off of this for a little bit of value. Worst case scenario, it can salvage itself back. So you're never just completely out of targets. We're playing Love's Vexations Miku. This is just an anti-change bottom deck bomb. With the 2-1 event, I don't think this card is entirely necessary, so you can cut it if you need room for other cards, but this is going to help us deal with things that have Encore, which the event can't do as well. We're playing 1 copy of the Memory Kick backup. Again, we have access to anti-change backup, and I'll talk about that a little bit later. But since we have so many other anti-change options, I've opted for the memory kick backup in this slot for our backup. It's 3,000 power, so it's going to help our early plays get pretty big on defense to survive. And most things that our opponents are going to be trying to contest us with probably have some form of staying power in like Encore. So memory kick can prevent our opponent from keeping them around once we counter over them. Really good at just permanently removing things. There are also a number of finishers that have been printed lately that require a full board. So if you're able to memory kick one of your opponent's characters on their finisher turn, you can actually turn off their finishers entirely sometimes. And lastly, we have Headphone Girl Miku. This is from the quintessential set, the trial decks. On play, search your deck for a quintuplets character, so you can get the bouncer if you need it, or a healer, or your finisher, just whatever you really need there. And on attack, pay 2, discard 1 to mill the bottom 4 of your opponent's deck, and deal X, where it's the number of climaxes you hit, and then you gain 1,000 power. So this is very similar to our actual finisher combo. This one does 4 instead of 2, but for a heavier cost. It's just sort of there as an off climax finisher if you can't manage to get the right one, or just a sort of tertiary lane to mill a little more against more compressed decks to punish them. You also have to consider that milling your opponent's deck in attack phase can get them closer to a potential refresh point, which is effectively an additional uncancelable 1 damage on your finishing turn. So these mill effects can double up for that as well. As far as some other options you can consider, there aren't actually a ton for Miku, in my opinion, but here are the few we've got. We have Inside the Igloo Miku Nakano. This is a pretty decent 0. It is a 3k. If you have 2 or more other Miku, that might be hard in the early game at 0. And on play, you can discard a climax to salvage a Miku, which is actually a really good effect with the gate triggers. You could opt to play this over the draw ditch effect if you wanted. We also have another 3k. This one's if you have 2 or more other quintuplets characters, but that's going to be equally as hard as having 2 or more other Miku in this deck. It gains 1,000, so it's going to be 3k as well, which is, again, pretty decent for survival at 0. Not amazing, but good enough. This one's a drop searcher, which is going to help us better than anything we actually have in the deck at getting multiples of our level 1 combo into hand. But it does cost stock, and it's not a plus, so I'm worried it might eat into our resources a bit much, but feel free to put this card in if you want some more selectivity in your deck. We have Secret Ingredient Miku. This card works really well with all the events we're playing. Once per turn, when you play an event, this gains the following ability. When it reverses battle opponent, look at up to 3 cards from the top of your deck. Choose up to 1 card from among them. You can get anything. Put it in your hand, put the rest in waiting room, and then discard 1. So this lets you hand fix into events and climaxes during your attack phase, which is pretty great. You can use this defensively if you have the counter, though I don't think 4,000 on defense is going to be running over many things. And on attack, if you have another Miku, this gains 3,000, meaning it actually attacks for 7, 8 if you have a climax in play, 8-5 with the assist, etc. 9k, yes, yeah, 9k if you have the brainstorm, since that's another 500 power. So this can get really big, so it's pretty easy to get reverses with. And any turn that you just play either your heal event or your check top 5, this is going to give you even more hand fix option. 2k backup is a 2k backup. Pretty self-explanatory. You could play one of these to try to grab off of your event counter if you want. It's pretty good at protecting our level 1 combo since we're 6,000 already. This can get you to 8,000 or 85 pretty easily in a lane, so if you're wanting to go that route and try to win board defensively with the level 1 combo, you can play these. Another counter option we have is the anti-change backup. It's pay to sack a character to anti-change to waiting room. Between the cost, having to sack a character, which isn't great given that we want a lot of early plays on our board, and we need our specific back row for our early plays. We don't really want to sack any of those characters off of our stage. And it only sends to waiting room, which is the same as our event. So I think most of the time, outside of the ability to like anti-damage your opponent in the middle of their attack phase with this, I think most of the time the event is just going to be more worthwhile for the resources it costs, and that memory kick is going to be the better option for the counter here. We also have How Do You Really Feel Miku. This is a 2-1. It gains a lot of power on play. It gains 1,000 times the number of quintuplets characters you have. If you play this last on a full board, it's going to gain 5,000, go to 12. And on attack, if you have extra gates in your hand, you can discard a gate trigger to gain 1,500 power and on reverse search. So that's going to put you at 13-5 even if you don't have a climax to play, and you get to search for any character you want when you reverse battle opponent. This can be good at just clearing out level 2 boards, especially if your opponent plays anything similar that has burst power and gets really big, and then goes small on defense for you to reverse easily. Could actually be really good against the Nino decks, since they're 2-2, goes up to like 12 on offense, but is only 7 on defense. You can very easily get a reverse on that, and use it to search a finisher, or search more early plays, or search a counter, even. Just a good way to filter out extra climaxes you have, really. From set 2, we have Tea Break on the Sofa Miku. This is not a great card, but it works really well with our events. It's a global 500, which I don't think is very meaningful in this deck, especially since our back row is pretty full with our Brainstorm and Assist. But whenever you play an event, you can put this card into your stock. If you have an open lane at when you go to level 1 and you do like 2 combos and then have a direct attack lane to put this in, it's pretty cool with the event counter because you can get stock on your opponent's turn and potentially deny reverses as well with it. Otherwise, it kind of just fills the role of like converting itself out of hand into 1 stock. But we have the 3500 that can convert hand to stock anyway, and I think that's a little more flexible than this card most of the time. Last option, this is actually the level 3 combo from the new set. You can slot out the set 1 level 3 combo for this if you want. Confession of a Love Miku. On play, you choose one of the following. You either search your deck or your waiting room for Headphone or Secret Confession and put it in your hand. This is very similar to our level 1 combo itself, but can also get the set 2 event alongside the set 1 event. Or it can get the set 1 or 2 Headphone, but it can get the 2-1 event that heals or summons a copy of this card, which is pretty strong. The problem, as I said earlier, is that if you're using this at level 2 with the event to get a bunch of them out, you're spending a lot of hand to not get very much in return. And if you're searching Secret Confession just to heal, you're paying 1 extra stock to get a heal compared to the set 1 finisher, which just heals on play. So apart from the fact that it can thin your deck, I don't think this is actually really doing a lot of good. Maybe the biggest thing is that it can grab the check 5 event to try to find multiple copies of itself. The Climax combo is free, but is one of the ones I mentioned where you have to have 4 or more other quintuplets characters, so this loses to Memory Kick counter itself. Or if you just don't have enough hand to get a full board after you've maybe run dry on resources against a field-based deck or something. The combo is just on once per turn. When its damage is cancelled, it stands. This is actually kind of problematic in other ways as well, since the damage step is before battle. If your opponent cancels and you stand, you still have to win battle against their character. So if you're frontal attacking with this into something that's bigger than you, you actually just lose your restand entirely. So I really don't think this is worth playing as a finisher over the set 1 finisher, which is why I've opted not to include it in the deck. In conclusion, this was the deck list we went with. Still not sure on the level 0 lineup. There are a couple of things you could change and add in, like the drop search if you wanted. But overall, I think this deck's like level 2 game and even level 3 game are really strong and worth looking at. It's just the zeros are going to need a bit of work to shore up. And maybe set 3 will actually give us the cards to really make that strong. But for now, I unfortunately don't think this is as strong as like the Ichika or Nino decks. But as far as waifu decks go, it's still pretty decent. Worth playing if you like Miku. So thank you all for watching. You can find me at BoatsDon'tSink on Twitter. You can find our store at Iron City Games on Facebook or ironcitygames.tcgplayerpro.com, where we have singles, sealed product, and playsets for order, so you can get whatever cards you're looking for there. We appreciate the support. Next time we will have the Yotsuba deck, and we'll follow that one up with Itsuki, so we'll see you then.